All right, it's 11 o'clock a.m. on Saturday morning, it's terrible, I don't know what it is anymore. Sorry, guys. March 21st, and this is Beth Messiah's temporary Facebook sort of service. And today we have Rachel, and we have people already starting to watch. And so she'll be here in just a minute after she is there. Oh, here she is. So I'm going to give her the phone. I wiped the screen with alcohol so that she could slobber on it. And there it is. This is my wife and longtime wife companion, Rachel. Woo!
Okay. Let's see, I'm going to set this up. That's pretty good. Could you go down and get my songbook and all those songs? So
yes,
maybe
ma'am.
Afterwards we'll do
Where's
a
your
song.
songbook?
You can put it. It's on the dining room table. You can put it over there. Okay, good morning. I'm not...
Yes, ma'am. I will do that.
I'm not a real techie, so this is a little bit different for me. I see a few people are watching, waving, doing that little wave. Thank you. But I'll have to ignore a lot of that so I can concentrate on what I'm doing here. We're going to basically do a Torah study and possibly, my hair doesn't look so good, and possibly do a song or two afterwards to close. I don't know whether to wait for people to come, maybe do one song to start out. Watching from England, Agnita Ayawala, bless you. Let's see, maybe while people are still signing on, we can do one song together. And I apologize for all this a cappella work, but that's what we have right now.
What she's really saying is, I apologize for my husband's voice. Now let's see.
No, my voice.
I know.
But
I'd love to get
this is from Psalm 121.
Okay.
Well, you could bring a dining room chair up.
Okay.
This is from Psalm 121. Asa einai el haharim me'ayin yavo ezri. I will lift my eyes to the hills, from where my help comes. Hi, Rebecca Rich, Hank Rich. We'll just do a couple courses of this while people are signing on, and then we'll get into the Torah study. It's traditional words right from the Psalm. Esa einai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri me'im Adonai Oseh shamayim va'aretz Hine lo yanum ve'lo yishan Shomer Yisrael Hine lo yanum ve'lo yishan Shomer Yisrael Shomer Yisrael. And that was the melody that Karen Davis wrote. Beautiful psalm. For I'll lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The maker of heaven and earth. And it also says, Shomer Yisrael, the guardian of Israel, neither slumbers nor sleeps. So, don't crowd me.
Okay.
Just sit over there.
6 feet.
Space.
My wife, 6 feet, she says.
All right, so our Torah portion for this morning is Vayakhel. It's the last Torah portion in the book of Exodus, and it extends all the way from Exodus 35, verse 1. What are you doing?
I'm seeing who's on.
Okay, it's going to be distracting to me if you keep doing that. I really have to concentrate.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Exodus 35, verse 1, through the end of Exodus 40:38. And I can read a little bit of the first part in Hebrew, and we'll translate it, and then at the end maybe we'll read the last part, and we can say, strengthen and be strengthened. Vayakahel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael, vayomer alehem, ele hadavarim asher tziva Adonai lasot otam. Moses gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together and said to them, "These are the words which the Lord has commanded you to do." Now, what I want to do is go back and look at where this all comes from, because this Torah portion is almost a repeat of several chapters that come earlier when Moses is on the mountain, where God is revealing all these things to him. And that's several chapters. We'll just breeze through some of that. And then we have almost all the same information again in this Torah portion. But in this case, he is speaking it to Israel instead of receiving it from God. And then they go about and actually do it. And then at the very end of this Torah portion, we see that it's all finished. The Mishkan, the tabernacle, is finished. Well, let's have a word of prayer. Lord, I pray that even though I really didn't finish this study, which is very broad and could be several hours, I pray that you would help my mind to put this all together, and that you would give people ears to hear. And I definitely want to make this speak to our situation right now. We are in an unprecedented situation for all of us, really. And I pray, oh God, that you would use the words of my mouth, your spirit, among all the people that might be listening, Lord God, to give us food that will really nourish us for these days, Lord, for these days to come, days of uncertainty, days when we are called to bear things we did not want to bear necessarily, Lord. Train us, teach us, enable us, empower us, strengthen us, O God, as we study this, your word, given miraculously, with fire, with the evidence of the presence of God on that mountain, given miraculously like no other text in the world ever. And as we study this, Lord, I pray that you would strengthen our hearts and give us insight and give us the ability to move forward in the days ahead. Amen. And I just want to say the traditional prayer before studying Torah, which is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Kitshanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, our God, King of the universe, who has set us aside with your commandments and commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. So, how do we come to today's portion where Moses is explicating, telling all of the many, many details of the sanctuary, of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, to the people of Israel in order to actually make it now? The final part of Exodus is making it. Well, I want to go back and put this into context, as I like to do, because my really heart, those of you from Beth Messiah know that when I've spoken lately, I've spoken a lot about explicating on that verse, I know the plans I have for you, plans for good and not for evil, and talking about how those plans go back to Eden, to the garden where God planted the tree of life. And he said plans the whole way through creation for our good and not for evil, plans for healing, plans for health, plans for sustenance. But I'm not going to go all the way back there today. I'm going to go back to Genesis 50, the very end of Genesis 19, where Joseph, it's at the very end, and the brothers are afraid he's going to punish them for what they had done. And Joseph says to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is today, to save many people alive. Therefore do not be afraid, I will provide for you and your little ones." And he comforted them and spoke kindly to him. And he also knew that God was going to take the people from Egypt, because of course they were in Egypt at this time at the end of Genesis. And he says, I am dying now, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So they did take Joseph's bones when they went back. But that's the setting. And then we see, of course, in the beginning of Exodus that the people of Israel thrived and multiplied, but a new Pharaoh arose who became afraid of them. And Moses was now in the court of Pharaoh, and all this difficulty began. Well, Moses slays that Egyptian and he has to run away. And in chapter 221, we see that Moses was content to live with the man who became his father-in-law, who is known here as Reuel and is also known as Jethro. Moses was content to live with the man. And this is kind of my theme for today. Moses did not expect in any way to be the deliverer of Israel, to be the deliverer of the Jews, nor to be the spokesman for God, both at Sinai and before Pharaoh. He was content. He had run away from the court in Egypt, which he probably always felt uncomfortable. He always knew he was a Jew. He knew who he was. And he was content to live with the man. And many of us were content with our lives. We didn't ask for any additional burden to carry. But I believe those of us that name the name of Yeshua, those of us that claim faith in God, do have a particular calling and burden at this time, which we'll talk about in a minute. So Moses did not expect for any calling. But right away, he's out tending the flock. We see in chapter 3 of Exodus, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. So right away, Moses is led to Horeb, the mountain of God. Now, I checked this out. I thought that Horeb is the same as Sinai, and I checked out on biblical archaeology. And the majority of scholars do believe that Horeb and Sinai are the same mountain, and in fact also Mount Seir. And there is a minority opinion that they might be different places, but the majority opinion is that they are the same mountain. So Moses is led as a shepherd to Horeb, the mountain of God, same mountain that Elijah fled to when he got the word of the Lord up there. So Moses looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. And we all know this story. So he turned aside to look, and God called him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moshe, Moshe. And he said, Hineni, here am I. And he tells him that it's holy ground, and he tells them that I am the God of your fathers. And Moses was afraid to look, and he gives him his calling right here. Something he never asked for. And then I'm not going to go over all the the Passover story. We probably are all familiar with that, where he becomes a spokesman before Pharaoh. Pharaoh doesn't want to let the people go. All the plagues happen. Finally, they go with this incredible miracle at the Red Sea, and they cross over. And then in Exodus 19, it says, in the 3rd month, after the children of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, in the 3rd month, on the same day they came to the wilderness of Sinai or Mount Horeb. So kind of back to where he was, it looks like. For they had departed from Rephidim and come to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. So Moses went up to God. And all this at Mount Sinai happens. And Moses begins speaking the specifics to Israel. God speaks the specifics to Moses in order to tell Israel. And in 2018, all the people witnessed the thunderings, the lightning flashes, the sound of the trumpet, the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled, stood afar off, and they said to Moses, you speak with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. Lest we die. And God gives chapters and chapters of revelation to Moses, the covenants, and he is to speak these to the people. And just as a little note, we see in Deuteronomy 18, we Messianic Jews use this verses a lot in 18:18, where God says, I will raise up a prophet like unto Moses. And he actually refers back to what I just read at Mount Sinai, where the people were so afraid that they asked for Moses to speak to them instead of God. So it says in 18:15, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me, like Moses, from your midst, from your brethren, and him you shall hear, according to all you desired of the Lord your God at Horeb, and that's where Sinai is now called Horeb here, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, nor let me see this great fire any more, lest I die. And the Lord said to me, what they have spoken is good. The Israelites had a good idea, and God's going to do that. I will raise up a prophet for them, a prophet like you, like Moses, from among their brethren, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all I command him. And those of us that are Messianic Jews believe that that is Yeshua, and also may speak of the other prophets that also spoke the word of God. But the specific prophet, like unto Moses, is Yeshua, and that's why Yeshua in Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount, many other places, likens himself to Moses, because he knew that this was an important requirement for the Messiah. So we see all this, and then we see in chapter 25, Moses is still on the mountain. He's on the mountain for many, many chapters. And we see in Exodus 25 that the Lord begins to speak to Moses to tell the children of Israel to bring an offering of gold, silver, bronze, blue, purple, scarlet thread, ram skins, oil, all the things that will be needed for the tabernacle, for the Mishkan. And God speaks to him all the way through chapter 20, the end of 31. He's speaking about all the preparations for the tabernacle and all the furnishings, all the incense and all these things. And at the end of 31 in verse 18, it says, and when he had made an end of speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. And then in 32, we have some nasty things happening when Moses comes down, because the people didn't know where he was. And I won't go through all these things, but in 34, Moses is called to cut 2 more tablets. He goes up again, comes back down. And then that brings us to our portion in 35, in which now all that God had spoken to Moses on the mountain, Sinai, Horeb, he is now gathering the congregation, Vayekahel. He gathered together et kol adat b'nei Yisrael, all of the congregation. Actually, adat is from the word of witness. So these are the witnesses of the children of Israel, those who witnessed Sinai. And he tells them all that God told him on the mountain. First, to bring the offering, all the specifics of what they need to build the Mishkan, the amazing details about just everything, the bars, the pillars, sockets, rings, poles, doors, curtains, all these kind of things, and all the artistic designs. Artisans are called. I like the idea of the craftsman. In 36, Moses called Bezalel and Aholiab and every gifted artisan in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, and everyone whose heart was stirred to come and do the work. Then all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the sanctuary came, each from the work he was doing. And women too. In verse 6, let neither man nor woman do any more work for the offering. They had so much already, and the people were restrained from bringing any more. In 35:25, just for you women, we are mentioned, all the women who were gifted artisans spun yarn with their hands and brought what they had spun of purple, blue, and scarlet, fine linen, and they were part of it too. Everybody was putting in what they had. And it talks about all the intricate designs and everything that were put together with the cherubim. And this is a study in itself. I'm not going to talk today about all the different specifics, but our portion for today details everything and shows the people actually doing it. Shows the people actually doing it. But I want to return now, before we get to the very end of this portion, I want to return to the idea that Moses was content to live with Jethro. Moses really was a humble man, as the scripture says itself. And he did not really, it doesn't say this explicitly, but it's apparent that he did not want to be Pharaoh. He did not want to end up, some big ruler. He really was content to live with the man, to have a humble life as a shepherd, to have his wife, have some children, and just finally have a place of his own, so to speak, be relaxed out in the wilderness. But that wasn't to be his lot. As we saw, God led him around to the mountain of God, the place that so many things happen. And I wanted to bring this to our situation today. God has prepared for us everything we need for our lives, for salvation, for healing, for everything. And the amazing, intricate detail of the Mishkan, of all of the furnishings, the gold, it all speaks of God's deep, deep yearning to dwell with mankind, to dwell within Israel, and through Israel to bring that to the rest of the world as well. God spends almost all of Exodus, the whole second part of Exodus, describing all of the contents of the Mishkan, and then the people build it with the exactitude that Moses was given, all so that God could dwell within Israel. And we do see in the end that it says that Vayechal Moshe et hamlacha, and this verse is expounded on quite a bit by the rabbis. I've studied just a little bit of it, that Moses finished the work. And then the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses, who was supposed to go in there to meet with God, was not even able to enter because the cloud rested above it. And the whole purpose of all of this is for God to have a people who trust him, who believe in him, that he can dwell in. And God incarnated, essentially, the Mishkan and dwelt in Israel. And in the same way, those of us that believe in Yeshua incarnated Yeshua as a way to dwell with the people. And again, in relation to Deuteronomy 18:15 through 18. So now I would like to, as I was saying, get back that Moses was content. He didn't want to be a ruler. He didn't want to be the deliverer of Israel. In fact, he refused several times when God called him. And he said, "Who am I? Why should I do this? I don't want to do this. I don't have the strength to do this. I don't have the words to do this." And as I've been meditating and desperately praying in some ways about this whole situation, I feel that God has called me, God has called us to do something that's beyond what we're capable of. And I want to share a favorite quote from J.R.R. Tolkien that Mary Fye reminded me of in an email that she may have sent to a few people. But I have read the whole trilogy 3 times, and I'm very sorry for you people that saw the movie before reading the trilogy. I just feel like it probably isn't the same. But here's the quotation. "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times." As most of you know, Frodo was carrying the ring, and he had to carry it to its destruction. And it was just a ring, but it had so much in it that it was very heavy, very difficult. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Most of us, probably all of us, would be content to have continued with the lives we had, to continue with being able to just go to the store freely, get what we need, come home, do our lives, meet at restaurants, meet with people. None of us wished that something like this would happen in our time, though those of us that read the Bible have had a doctrine, have had a belief that some terrible things will happen toward the end, whenever that may be. Yet we are not really prepared. And I just want to share a personal story. I started writing this up, but I haven't finished it. But I myself have had a vision of myself through the years, even as a child, actually, when I would listen to the recordings by Theodore Bickel of the Songs of Israel. And I still remember the album cover of this chalutza with her short shorts, working in the field and being very self-conscious about my legs. I didn't like the idea of having to wear short shorts, but I loved that album, and I somehow had a sense as a child of being a real part of the people of Israel, both through history, historically, just feel part of that stream. And then I just had a sense of wanting to comfort Israel as I began to be aware of some of the early terrorist events that would happen in Israel in the early 1960s. I had this sense of wanting to comfort Israel, and I didn't know the scriptures really then. I didn't know Isaiah 40, comfort ye, my people. It's Isaiah, right? But I just had, nachamu ami. That was just in my heart, even as a child. And then when I became a believer in Yeshua, I used to have these imaginings, I guess. I guess I thought at the time that maybe it was the Lord, but it was in my mind. I pictured myself with some bad thing happening in Israel and me going and walking through this deserted place where people were suffering and helping the people and so forth, and various things like that. And when people used to argue about the doctrines of the tribulation, which I think is a silly argument, but are we going to be here, or are we not going to be here, and all those kind of things, I would say, well, I don't know, but I sure hope I'm going to be here, because I want to be here to help people. I want to be here to bring practical needs and comfort and faith and hope to people. Well, little did I know something like this would occur in my lifetime. And all those imaginations, all those dreams of mine mean nothing, because I don't have the strength to do anything that was in my imagination. I imagined somehow that I would have that faith. I imagined that somehow magically I would have that amount of faith and hope to be able to share with people. But as it turned out, last fall, some of you know my husband, Rabbi Michael, wasn't feeling well. There were some symptoms that we couldn't identify and so forth. And he's doing much better. I want to acknowledge my brother who's listening right now. Thank you so much. Love you.
He's been there the whole time.
And Michael wasn't doing well, and this put a real burden on my heart. He's doing much better now, for those of you that may not have known about it. But it drove me last November, December, to say to myself, you know what? I need to get serious about meeting with God. I need to get serious about my faith. I can't think I have faith. Like, I was just reading a book on prayer, and he said, stop now and pray. Reading a book about how to pray is not the same as praying. And many times we kind of read about something, or we think about something, or we have an idea, we have a belief about something, but we're not actually doing that something. And truly, my whole life as a believer, it's not that I never prayed, never met with God. I have, and I've had certain instances where I felt like I've definitely heard from God, and he's led me in certain ways, and I know his faithfulness, and he's been faithful to our children throughout all these years. And yet, when we read in Psalm 91 and many other places in Psalms about he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And I have not really known that secret place. How do we find a place that we really know that we are under the shadow of the Almighty, that we are there with God, we are there in the shelter of the Almighty? How do we find that place? What is this secret place that seems secret to me? And the other side of it is, I feel that I don't have the luxury. It's very easy for me to get really OCD in these times, and I have been, and to let fear take me away, to let fear and problem solving. Okay, fear can take me away, but fear takes me to OCD problem solving. But it speeds up, it revs up. I don't know if any of you relate to that. Let me know if some of you relate to that, where it just revs up, and it can disturb our lives. It disturbs the ones around us. It doesn't help anybody. And I felt the Lord speaking to my heart that I need to grow up, and I have, like Moses, though I imagined these things, it was kind of like a story, like reading about prayer, like reading about these great exploits, and having some kind of imagination that could be a movie, but not really, honestly, not really having the strength, not having any idea how to do this. The other thing I would imagine for years, and I would say, and I had a kind of personal doctrine about it, that we can't really speak to others. We can't speak of our faith in Yeshua to the Jewish people or to others until we are able to find hope and faith in that place of destruction. And I set up a whole trip to Poland and Auschwitz because I wanted to be there. I wanted to see these places. And I wanted to be able to have that faith in that place of destruction, standing in the ashes, having faith, having hope, being able to communicate it to other people. And so far, it's not like the Holocaust, what we're in right now. It's a very different kind of thing. Yet there's tremendous uncertainty and we just don't know what the future holds for us. So starting in the fall, I began to get very serious about having real faith in the real God. And we have no control over that. It's not something you can manufacture. So I just did a lot of crying, did a lot of laying on my floor in my office, asking God to bring me to that place. And I feel that I've to some extent, been learning that it's hard to explain. It's just doing it, There's no secret in the sense of method. It's just coming to God. Those of you that maybe don't really believe in God or don't believe in the personal nature of God, that God can speak to us, it might seem very far-fetched. But I feel we're at a time when nothing else can stand. And I felt that God spoke to my heart last fall as I was praying. I saw in my mind a kind of image of like a tsunami or a tidal wave come over the land, and it destroyed all these buildings that were just sticks. And I felt like God said in my heart, I'm going to take down all those things that don't stand. And there were some buildings that were still standing, and I will shake what can be shaken. And it was for my heart, God was going to shake what can be shaken in my heart, and all those imagined realities that really weren't real. And what do we have to stand on now? What do we have that is sure except God, except the eternal things? I just heard someone read an essay by C.S. Lewis called In the Atomic Age, which he wrote right after Hiroshima, and about fear. It's a very different situation now, but still there's a lot of fear of the end of civilization, the end of these things. And he he tries to bring it out that, well, we always knew that civilization would end. Nature itself tells us that things are winding down. And he does a much better job of logical argument than I do. But in the end, we are spirits, not only nature. We are spirits in nature. And it's time to get serious with God. Those who don't know Yeshua, don't have a personal relationship with God, it just takes saying, God, I know there's nothing else to stand on. Show me your reality. Show me your reality. I'm willing. It takes a willingness, but you can't manufacture faith. But you can say to God, you're willing to believe, you're willing to follow him. He needs to give you that gift of faith. And we that have said that we're believers for so many years, we need to exercise that gift of faith. And I don't mean to say we need, do this, do that. But I feel in my life, God is saying, you don't have the luxury to run after fear. You don't have the luxury to hope that somebody else will help you, to hope that things will just work out. But I feel God is saying to me, and perhaps to some of you, it's time to carry hope for those that can't find hope themselves. And so I'm crying out daily to God. You never win this battle totally. You don't find the time when it's over and we're there. This is a daily struggle, and it's daily mercy. His mercies are new every morning. And yet we have to fight for it every morning and come to God and ask him for that faith. Read the Word. The Word of God is special. It's an unusual text, and it has life in it. And it will give you life as you read it. And those of us that feel called, that have a relationship with God, I encourage you to daily seek the Lord for hope, for faith, for good, for looking at the good, for bringing the hopeful word, the kind word to other people, to be the ones that can hold things up for now. We don't know what the future brings. We don't know. There's no certainty, except we all will die eventually. We know that nature tells us that. We will all die eventually. So let's give hope to those that can't develop hope themselves. Let's work on that every morning, every afternoon. Every time we start to feel that fear and start to feel that uncertainty, come back to God and get that hope. And so that's all I want to say. It's been, I don't know, a while. I don't know how long it's been, maybe 40 minutes. So, do you want to pray to end this, or do you have something to add?
I just, no, not really. I mean, well, just some technical business that we got to do this for a while. We can't meet in our building, and that's true for a lot of people this day and age, this time, I should say. So, for the foreseeable future, I know we're not going to have services in our building next weekend. We'll be doing this, which is Friday night at 8 o'clock. And I think it's a great thing for, I share at 8, and it's archived, of course, being Facebook, and then it goes on YouTube as well. I will share it at 8 o'clock on Friday, and then I'd like Rachel to continue, to be help to share on Saturday the kind of heart, things from the heart that she did today. So that's kind of where we're going to be for the foreseeable, at least through next weekend, and I'm probably go beyond that, unfortunately, So that's all I had to say.
All right. So just to wrap that up, Moses was content to live with Jethro, but God had something else for him. And most of us have been relatively content in our own lives. I know there's always a degree of discontentment. Life never meets our expectations, at least if you're a person like me. Nevertheless, I'd much rather still be able to go to my workout studio, to do my usual rounds, work out, go to Whole Foods, come home, and meet with my kids and do all these things. But we wished it hadn't happened in our time, but that's not for us to decide. So those of us that claim to have a relationship with God, to believe in God, or those of us that want to have a belief and a real faith in God, a real hope and trust in God, that word trust, betach badonai, trust in the Lord. Man, how do you do that? That was my prayer. I forgot about that word, betach badonai. Lord, how do I actually trust you? Not have the idea of trusting you, not have a doctrine of trusting you, but how do I actually trust you? And that has to be fought out. That has to be fought out with you and God. And you can pray with others, but fight it out with you and God. So let's just read that last part again. V'yachas ha'anan et ohel moed, the tent of meeting. This is the place where Moses met with God. The cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter because the cloud rested above it. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Whenever the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, the children of Israel would go onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, they did not journey till the day it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was above the tabernacle by day and fire over it by night in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. May we all be strengthened and strengthened together.
Yeah, and that is said because it's the end of the book. And that is said at the end of one of the books of the Torah. Just wanted to say that this is going to be archived, and so you can actually, watch this later on, of course. And also, it's going to be on YouTube within a very short period of time as well. Once it's uploaded, at Beth Messiah's YouTube channel. So,
I forgot to say. Why are we bringing hope? What's the hope? The hope is that God is real. God is real. And life is more than life here as we see it. That is the hope. And I'm sorry I was assuming you knew what I was talking about. But that is the hope. That whatever happens here, whatever suffering we might go through here, there is hope because God is real and God is love, God is mercy, and we will understand and know that mercy, and that's what we're bringing to other people. Forgive me for not saying that.
Let me just say then that we'll see some of you, or many of you, or you can tell others, whatever, at 8 o'clock next Friday. We've already canceled services next weekend, so we'll see you at 8 o'clock next Friday night and 11 o'clock next Saturday morning. So that's on these same, that channel or whatever. The same.
That place.
Yeah, that's
so thank you all for sticking with it, for watching. I wish I could see responses. I'm sure you all have thoughts. I guess you could write some of them on Michael's Facebook page.
Yeah.
I went off Facebook probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago.
They can respond on my Facebook page.
Can respond.
I won't be able to maybe.
If you have my number, feel free to text me or call if you want to respond in any way. Anyway, I guess I'll do something like this again next week. And we'll be starting the book of Leviticus, Vayikra. So we'll take a look at that and see what's going. And I wish all of you health and the best health and hope, happiness.
You want to do an Aaronic benediction?
Sure.
You can do it, or I can do it. Let me just say again that this is going to be archived, and you can, so if anybody wants to watch it or have somebody else watch it. All right. Yivarechecha Adonai b'yishmerecha, Ye'er Adonai panav alecha b'yichanecha, panav alecha b'yichanecha, Yasa Adonai panav alecha b'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Lift up the light of his countenance and give you peace. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
And peace to everyone. We love you. Thank you so much.
And Robert, you just posted something that disappeared because it was on a text, but I think it might have to do with the fact that it's going to be uploaded to some other things. I don't know whether it's the Facebook page or whatever.
Maybe on YouTube. I don't know.
Or the website.
All right. We'll finish. Thank you all again. Bye.
Don't do that.
Oh, what did I do?
You canceled the entire thing.
I canceled the entire thing?
Yes.
Oh, no.
It's not going to be archived now.